The private jet sliced through the Nigerian sky, its engines a low hum as it descended toward Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja. Inside, Daniel gazed out the window, the sprawling city below a stark contrast to the glittering skyline of New York he'd left behind. Daniel Uzoma, the only son of Chief Emmanuel Uzoma, one of Anambra State's wealthiest industrialists, was no stranger to luxury. His father's empire, built on oil, real estate, and manufacturing, had made him a billionaire by inheritance. Yet, as the plane touched down, Daniel's heart raced, not with excitement, but with resolve. For years, he'd lived in the United States, managing his father's international investment and carving out his own tech empire. But wealth had come at a cost. Every relationship, every friendship, seemed tainted by his fortune. Women saw dollar signs, men saw opportunity. At 30, Daniel was tired of the charade. He wanted something real, love that surpassed his bank account. And so, he had conceived a plan so audacious it bordered on madness: return to Nigeria, disguise himself as a homeless beggar, and search for a woman who would love him for who he was, not what he owned. As the jet taxied to a stop, Daniel adjusted the worn baseball cap he'd bought from a thrift store in Brooklyn. His designer suit was gone, replaced by a faded t-shirt, threadbare jeans, and scuffed sneakers. A small duffel bag held his only possessions, a few changes of clothes, a burner phone, and a tattered notebook. He told his father he was returning to Nigeria for a personal project, leaving out the details. Chief Uzoma, a man of few questions and boundless trust in his son, had simply nodded. Stepping onto the tarmac, Daniel felt the humid Abuja air wrap around him like a blanket. He bypassed the VIP lounge, ignoring the curious glances of airport staff who might have recognized him under different circumstances. Outside, he hailed a battered taxi and directed the driver to a rundown motel on the city's outskirts. The driver, a talkative man named Musa, prattled on about politics and fuel prices, oblivious to the billionaire in his back seat. At the motel, Daniel paid in cash and checked in under a false name, Chidi Eze. The room was small, the walls stained, the bed creaking under a thin mattress. He sat on the edge, staring at his reflection in a cracked mirror. "This is it," he whispered. No turning back. The next morning, Daniel began his transformation. He rubbed dirt into his clothes, let his beard grow scruffy, and practiced a slouch that made him seem smaller, less imposing. By noon, he was sitting cross-legged on a tattered mat at the entrance gate of the University of Abuja, a cardboard sign scrawled with "Please help" propped beside him. The university's main gate was a bustling hub with students, lecturers, and vendors streamed past, their lives a chaotic symphony of chatter and movement. Daniel's first day was a lesson in humility. Most passers-by ignored him, their eyes sliding over him as if he were part of the scenery. A few tossed coins, their faces a mix of pity and discomfort. One student, a lanky boy in a faded Manchester United jersey, dropped a crumpled 50 naira note and muttered, "Just manage this." Daniel nodded, keeping his eyes down. He wasn't here to collect money, he would donate anything he received by the end of his mission. He was only here to observe, to learn, to wait. Days turned into weeks. Daniel roamed the university's environs, sleeping in alleys, eating at roadside bukas, and blending into the city's underbelly. He listened to the stories of other beggars: Mama Tolu, who'd lost her family in a car accident and now begged to feed her grandchildren; Sule, a former mechanic whose shop burned down, leaving him destitute. Their resilience humbled him, but their stories also sharpened his purpose. If he could find someone who saw him, really saw him, in this state, he'd know her heart was true. But Abuja's streets were not kind. One evening, as Daniel sat near a busy market, a group of area boys, local thugs, surrounded him. Their leader, a wiry man with a scar across his cheek, demanded tax for sitting on their turf. Daniel, keeping his voice low, tried to reason with them, but the situation escalated. A fist caught him in the jaw, and he stumbled, tasting blood. Instinct screamed to fight back. He trained in martial arts in New York, but he couldn't break character. Instead, he called into a ball, letting them take the few naira in his pocket. As they walked away, laughing, Daniel's resolve hardened. This was the price of his quest. Weeks later, Daniel noticed a pattern. Every few days, someone left a small parcel near his spot at the university gate. Sometimes it was a loaf of bread, sometimes a bottle of water, once even a clean pair of socks. There was never a note, never a face. The gifts appeared when he was away, as if the giver was watching, waiting for him to leave. Intrigued, Daniel began varying his routine, lingering nearby to catch a glimpse of this mysterious benefactor. But they were clever, always slipping away unseen. One night, curiosity got the better of him. He hid behind a nearby tree, pretending to leave his spot. Hours passed, the campus quieting as students retreated to hostels. Then, a figure emerged, a slim silhouette in a hoodie, moving swiftly. They dropped a plastic bag containing a hot meal and vanished into the darkness. Daniel's heart pounded. Was this the person he'd been searching for? Someone kind enough to help a stranger without seeking recognition. He didn't pursue them. Not yet. Instead, he decided to leave a note at his spot. Thank you for your kindness. Who are you? The next day, the note was gone, but no reply came. The parcels continued, each one a quiet gesture of compassion. Daniel's hope grew, but so did his caution. He'd learned the hard way that trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. As Daniel settled into his role, he became a fixture at the university gate. Students began to recognize him, some even calling him Chichi. But not everyone was kind. A wealthy student named Victor Nwanko, the son of a prominent politician, took a particular dislike to him. Victor, flashy and entitled, drove a sleek SUV and strutted through campus with his friends. He saw Daniel as a blight on the university's image and made a point of taunting him, tossing coins at his feet or accidentally spilling drinks near him. One afternoon, Victor's cruelty escalated. He and his friends surrounded Daniel, mocking his ragged clothes. See this beggar thinking he's part of University of Abuja, Victor sneered, kicking over Daniel's cardboard sign. The crowd laughed, but Daniel noticed a few students watching with unease. One, a young man with a quiet demeanor, stepped forward. Leave him alone, Victor, he said firmly. He's not harming anyone. Victor turned, his face darkening. How dare you challenge me, Paul? The tension crackled, but Paul held his ground, his eyes steady. The standoff ended when Victor's friends pulled him away, muttering about wasting time on a nobody. Paul glanced at Daniel, offering a small nod before walking off. Daniel made a mental note, Paul was someone to watch. That evening, Daniel overheard a conversation that sent a chill down his spine. Two of Victor's friends were whispering near a campus cafe, unaware that Daniel was nearby, blending into the shadows. Victor's planning something big, one said. He's paying some guys to deal with that beggar. Says he's tired of seeing him around. Daniel's stomach twisted. He'd faced danger before, but this felt personal. Victor wasn't just a bully, he was a threat. The attack came 3 nights later. Daniel was sleeping in an alley near the university when he heard footsteps. 5 men, their faces obscured by hoods, surrounded him. One held a knife, its blade glinting in the moonlight. Victor says you're a problem, the leader growled. Time to disappear. Daniel's training kicked in. He dodged the first swing, grabbing the man's wrist and twisting until the knife clattered to the ground. The others rushed him, but Daniel was faster, stronger than they expected. He fought back, landing precise blows, his body moving on instinct. Within minutes, the attackers were fleeing, one clutching a broken nose, another limping. Breathing heavily, Daniel leaned against the wall. His cover was intact, but he was shaken. Victor's vendetta was more dangerous than he'd realized. He needed to be smarter, more vigilant. And he needed to find out who his mysterious benefactor was, before Victor's next move. Months passed, and Daniel's life as Chidi Eze became second nature. He'd grown leaner, his face weathered by the sun and hardship. The parcels continued, each one a lifeline, but the giver remained elusive. Then, one rainy evening, everything changed. Daniel was sitting at the university gate, soaked to the bone, when a young woman approached. She was in her early 20s, with a quiet grace and eyes that held both strength and kindness. Her clothes were simple, her bag heavy with books. She knelt beside him, holding out her umbrella. "You'll get sick out here," she said softly, her voice carrying the lilt of an Igbo accent. "Take this." Daniel stared, caught off guard. Her face was unfamiliar, yet there was something about her, a warmth that felt like home. "Thank you," he managed, taking the umbrella. She smiled, a small, genuine curve of her lips, and introduced herself as Grace Okafor, a final year law student. Over the next few weeks, Grace became a regular presence. She didn't pity him, she talked to him like a person, sharing stories about her studies, her dreams of becoming a human rights lawyer, and her humble upbringing in a small village in Imo State. Daniel listened, captivated, careful to keep his own story vague. He told her he'd lost everything in a bad business deal, a half-truth that satisfied her curiosity without breaking his disguise. Grace was different from anyone he'd met. She didn't ask for anything, didn't judge, didn't pry. She brought him food, sometimes sat with him to discuss books or politics, her laughter a rare light in his grueling days. Daniel felt a pull toward her, but he held back. Was she the one? Or was this another test he had to pass? One evening, as Daniel and Grace sat under a tree near the gate, Paul, the student who'd stood up to Victor, approached. He looked uneasy, glancing around before speaking. "Chidi, I know who you are," he said quietly. "You're not just a beggar. I've seen your picture in my father's office. You're Daniel Uzoma." Daniel's blood ran cold. Grace frowned, confused. "What's he talking about?" she asked. Paul hesitated, then explained. His father worked for Chief Uzoma's company and had shown him photos of Daniel during a business meeting. Paul had recognized him weeks ago but kept silent, respecting his privacy. Daniel's mind raced. His cover was blown. He looked at Grace, expecting disappointment, betrayal. Instead, she laughed softly. "Is that true?" she asked, her eyes searching his. "Are you really a billionaire pretending to be a beggar?" He nodded, bracing for her reaction. To his surprise, Grace's expression softened. "I don't care who you are, neither do I care about your money," she said. "I saw you, Chidi, or Daniel. I saw someone kind, someone who listened. And that's enough for me." The revelation changed everything. Daniel confessed his plan to Grace, explaining his search for true love. She listened, her face a mix of amusement and admiration. "You're mad," she teased, but her eyes shone with affection. They began spending more time together, their bond deepening. Grace introduced him to her family, a modest and humble family, who welcomed Chidi without question. But Victor's threat loomed. When he learned of Daniel's true identity, through a leak from one of Paul's friends, he was furious. One day, he found Daniel sitting under a tree near the school gate, not for his usual begging routine, but this time as if he was waiting for someone. Victor confronted him, his SUV screeching to a stop. "You think you can play games with us?" he shouted, drawing a crowd. "You're a fraud." Daniel stood tall, his disguise no longer needed. "I am Daniel Uzoma," he said calmly, his voice carrying authority. "And I am not going anywhere." The crowd gasped, whispers rippling through. Victor, humiliated, stormed off, but Daniel knew it wasn't over. Days later, Victor's father, a corrupt politician, tried to retaliate by spreading rumors about Daniel's deception. But Daniel was prepared. He contacted his father, who used his influence to quash the rumors. Victor's family faced scrutiny instead, their shady dealings exposed in the press. With his identity revealed, Daniel faced a new challenge, returning to his old life. He invited Grace to his family's mansion in Anambra, where Chief Uzoma welcomed her with open arms. But Grace hesitated. "I love you, Daniel," she said one evening, standing on the mansion's balcony. "But I don't belong in this world. I'm just a village girl." Daniel took her hand, his heart full. "You're not just anything," he said. "You're the woman I've been searching for. Stay with me, not for the money, but for us." Grace smiled, tears in her eyes. "Okay," she whispered. "But only if you promise to keep being the man I met at the gate." Daniel and Grace married a year later, their wedding a blend of opulence and simplicity, reflecting their shared values. The university gate, once his stage, became a symbol of their love, a reminder that true worth lies not in what you have, but in who you are. Victor, humbled by his family's downfall, faded into obscurity. Paul became a close friend, working with Daniel on community projects. And the mysterious benefactor. Grace confessed it was her all along, her quiet act of kindness the spark that lit Daniel's heart. The story of Daniel and Grace spread across Abuja, a tale of love found in the unlikeliest of places, proving that even in a world of wealth and power, the heart seeks something far greater.